Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Pula. My guest today is Blake Huber, and Blake is going to talk about his uh his political party. So take over. It's yours.
Yes, good morning, Cynthia. Yes. Again, my name is Blake Huber. I'm actually the presidential candidate of the Approval Voting Party. So several years ago, a friend of mine here in Denver, we're talking about different voting methods, and approval voting was one of those that we were most interested in. I'll tell you a little bit more story about him later, but just as an introduction, we decided to promote the concept of approval voting. And in order to do that, we were gaining very little traction. So we decided to form a political party. And in Colorado, it's fairly easy to do that. So in 2016, he ran for president. He came to me. His name is Frank Atwood, by the way. So Frank came to me and said, Blake, I need a running mate. And so I said, Frank, I can be the president of Vice. I'm in.
Oh, great.
So he ran for president. I was on the ticket for vice president.
Mhm.
We actually were independent candidates in Colorado. We had to pay a fee. I think it was $1,000
That
to get on
much.
the ballot. It was
Wow.
that much, but also that little. So compare that to these days where you're paying 30, 40, $50,000 to get enough signatures to get on the ballot.
Right.
So we got on the ballot, and 2 years later, I ran for Secretary of State. I received almost 14,000 votes
That's
in a
good.
three-way race. Correct. Not enough votes to be successful, but success, measuring success is interesting. So we were successful in the fact that we gained a number of people who wanted to be part of the effort. And that's a big success. And
Mhm.
14,000 votes is nothing to sneer at.
That's
And
true.
that's a three-way race. So in 2018, that qualified us to be on the ballot as what Colorado calls a qualified political organization. Once we reached 1,000 registered voters in our party, then we were considered under minor party rules. Now, I don't like to talk about minor parties or third parties. I prefer to talk about alternative parties because we are the alternative.
Mhm.
So from there, I ran in 2020 during the pandemic. I ran for president again. And then this year I'm running again. So this will be the third time I've been on the ticket against Donald Trump for
Wow. Wow.
whatever that means. And if you can tell, I'm actually in my car. It's a Tesla, and I'm charging it right now.
Mhm.
Um, I do a lot of driving. I do a lot of campaigning, so I'm all over the country.
So how did you do in your other two races against the Democrats and Republicans?
That's a great question. And I didn't do well at all. So the first time in 2016, we got about 350 votes nationwide. We were on the ballot only in Colorado. Now, during the pandemic, I was able to be on the ballot both in Vermont and in Colorado. And again, we got about 350 votes nationwide. I'll explain why in just a minute. This year, I'm saying to people, you're going to hear something from me you've never heard from a politician before. Please don't vote for me.
What?
Please don't vote for me. Correct. I don't want to be a spoiler. Okay. Someone just recently dropped out of the race, RFK Jr. He
Right.
dropped out of the race because he doesn't want to be a spoiler. The whole idea of approval voting is to eliminate the concept of spoilers. So, right now, if you're in a two-way race and you're somewhat, let me give you a better example. So, in this town for mayor, they're trying to elect a mayor. There's three people running:
Mhm.
Jesus, Gandhi, and Hitler. Now, there's enough people in this town that like Hitler. He gets 34% of the vote. Gandhi and Jesus split the vote amongst the people who don't like Hitler. They get 33% each. So,
Mhm.
in approval voting, if only a few people, well, about 1%, would vote for Gandhi and for Christ,
Mhm.
then we would not elect a Hitler. That's the power of approval voting. So you can actually express yourself fully at the ballot box. You like two candidates, you like three candidates out of five, doesn't matter. Frank likes to say you vote for one, You vote for some, or you vote for all but one. Because I can never vote for that particular person because of whatever. So that's the
Let
essence of
me let
approval
me
voting.
ask you let me ask you a question. You mentioned
Sure.
Robert Kennedy. I
Right.
don't think he dropped out of the race because um he perceived himself as a spoiler. I think the Democratic Party made it so difficult for him that he says, I can't do this. And that's why he dropped out. You know, the two parties have a grip in this country that's unbelievable. And people in this country don't even realize that there's other voices out there. There's
That's
third,
right.
fifth candidate. They don't get their message out. So people think it's a two-party system, and that's how they feel.
You're absolutely right. And let me explain why that is. A French mathematician back in the 1950s came up with this law called Duverger's law. Now, in American parlance, it's Duverger, Duverger. So Google Duverger's law, and you'll find that he figured that if you have a single vote, if you can only vote for one, if you can only pick the lesser of two evils, you're always going to end up with two dominant parties. So we're victims of a system that is corrupt. And we need to take back our ballot box. It's our ballot box. It's not the power broker's ballot box. It's not the administrator's ballot box. It's our ballot box.
Yes, it is our ballot box, but the establishment makes it so difficult that those who think it's their ballot or your ballot box, my ballot box, they don't even allow us in for crumbs on the table.
So let's get behind approval voting, because that way they can't control the ballot box. If you can vote for me and somebody else, or you can vote for three people you know and like, then your vote will actually count. And each individual, the way it works, the math behind it, is that each individual gets their true level of support. So if I vote for you, for example, that's a vote for you. If I vote for you and somebody else, that's a vote for you and somebody else. It doesn't add together, it doesn't split apart. It's an individual vote. My ballot, it's one person, one ballot. Instead of one person, one vote, it's one person, one ballot, and you mark your ballot for all the candidates you like. Everybody else does the same. Now let's see who's marked on the most ballots. That person has the broadest popular support, and that person gets elected, and we win because we fully and totally expressed ourselves at the ballot box.
Mhm.
Think about the Christ and Gandhi and Hitler example, and you'll
Right.
see exactly what I mean. If you voted for Christ and Gandhi, that's a vote for Gandhi and a vote for Christ. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean you're adding two. That means you have individual votes for each one. If you if you elect not to vote for more than one, you elect not to vote for more than one. And
So,
whoever gets the most votes, that's the person that gets elected, just like it is
so,
now.
so I assume that you're not raising millions of dollars like the Democratic Party did, right?
No,
So,
exactly.
so
So
therefore,
we're not. Uh-huh.
th- therefore, how do you get your message out? How do you articulate your issues that everybody can understand and maybe have an aha moment?
I meet people all over the place. I go to conferences. I engage in. Next week, I'm at the Independent Voters Conference here in Denver.
Mhm.
Uh, let's see, it's INC. I can't remember what the acronym means, but there's a bunch of independent voters going to come together here in Denver. I'll be there giving a workshop. Okay. I meet people online, like somebody named Cynthia. Okay. And then she's kind enough to say, Blake, let's talk. And we sit down, we have a conversation. And then
Right.
people look at that. I was recently in a debate last night with a bunch of other folks who are running for president, who are part of alternative parties, and they have all their own issues, but nobody listens to them because we have a system that says you can only vote for one. Once we get past that, more people will understand. as I keep telling Frank, we're going to be an overnight success one of these years. So we do have approval voting in St. Louis for mayor, and we do have approval
Oh,
voting
good.
in Fargo, North Dakota, both for mayor.
Mhm.
So those people have adopted that because they want to have better representation. The progressives in Fargo wanted it because they're not getting any progressive um, people to run for mayor. Sorry, my Siri just interrupted us. Uh, they're not getting enough support for their progressive candidates. And so they wanted to have approval voting so you could vote for more than one.
Mhm.
In St. Louis, there was underrepresentation of minority classes. It was always a white guy that ran and won for mayor. So they wanted to have better representation. They wanted to be able to vote for people who look like themselves. And when the voter can vote for somebody who looks like themselves and maybe somebody else, maybe somebody who's wise, older and wise, and has knowledge and understands all issues of all people, maybe they want to vote for that person as well.
Mhm.
Okay. We now have in our past, recent past, we've had a black president. We
Mhm.
now have a woman of color who's vice president who may get elected. She's running against Trump. Okay, we'll see what happens.
Mhm.
But approval voting will speed that up. If you can vote for somebody who looks like you, somebody who believes the same things you do, you're going to vote for that. Now, you may also vote for somebody who's more electable, in air quotes. So, right now, with a single vote, you're always looking for, most people use electability as a criteria. So they're looking at, well, who's most electable? Who do I hold my nose and say, well, he or she's electable and I don't like them, but I have to vote for them because they're more electable than anybody else that I agree with. Why not change the system, change the method of voting to where you vote for all the candidates you agree with? And then
But
whoever
but
gets the most
but
votes gets
but
elected.
you said change the system. You have your Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all of those people that are like the palace guards. They don't
Uh-huh.
anybody in. They don't let anybody in. So how could you
Not to
change?
interrupt Cynthia, but they have no control over voting. They have control over what they do in legislation on a national level, but all voting is local. So what we're promoting is get your mayor elected by approval voting. We want to take baby steps. Somebody asked me about 6 years ago at Politicon in California, what are the unintended consequences? And I had to think for a minute. And I said, well, the game theory people say this is the best way to select people, but I'm not sure. I don't know what the unintended consequences are. So we want to take baby steps. I want your mayor to be elected by approval voting. And as we have enough mayors get elected, 20 or 30 mayors getting elected through approval voting, like they do in Fargo, like they do in St. Louis, then we can find out, are there any issues? What's the voter feedback? And once we get that feedback, we can decide if we want to go state by state or if we want to have all elections be handled by approval voting.
So are you the national chairman of this party?
No, Frank Atwood here in Denver, Colorado. He actually lives in Littleton, Colorado, and
Okay.
he's working to get Littleton to approve a measure where the mayor could be elected by approval voting.
Okay. So when you go out and you meet people,
Yes.
you go to like fairs and stuff.
Well, we've been to Freedom Fest. We've been to the Young Americans. They have a convention every year, and we've been to that. We've been to a number of different groups to talk about approval voting. We were
Okay.
in Nevada. We were at Freedom Fest in Nevada several years ago in Las Vegas, and a woman came up to us and said, "Would you come talk to our group?" This was a Tea Party group in Mesquite, Nevada, and we went to Mesquite, Nevada to give them a presentation about approval voting. But it's not just Frank and I that are doing this. There are people all over the country. There's Seattle approves, there's Utah approves, there's Missouri approves, there's folks in Texas that are working on approval voting. It's not just us. We're just the ones out there trying to get nationwide recognition that this is a concept that needs to be looked at.
So you're looking at the particular concept. You're not focusing on the everyday issues that people face.
Now, in my campaign for president, I am focusing on issues:
Okay.
immigration, women's right to choose. These types of issues, gun control, these types of issues are very important. So in my campaign, in order to get attention for myself, approval voting is not sexy. Okay, let's be real. Voting methods are just nah, okay, so whatever. People don't understand the power of approval voting though. So I have issues about the Second Amendment. I have issues about immigration. I have issues about women's right to choose, pro-choice, pro-life. All these things are things that I want to talk about. Absolutely. But that's just to get more attention to, well, this guy's not crazy. He really has strong beliefs about different things. And he also wants us to have a system of voting, a method of voting that actually would allow us to vote for him and other people.
Okay, what do you think is the most important issue in 2024 facing not only Americans but the world?
So again, approval voting is number one issue. Okay. But within that, other issues that I like to talk about is we have a Supreme Court that decided at one point nationwide we should have abortion to be legal. Okay. A woman's right to choose to be legal. Now, I ran back in the 70s for the state house in Kansas. And when asked that question, I said, I'm going to make a guarantee to you, a promise and a guarantee. I will never have an abortion.
That's
Now,
funny.
you smile and you say that's funny, but it's the fact. I can't say whether a woman should or shouldn't have an abortion because I will never have one. I'll never be faced with
Right.
that dilemma. Okay. Now, personally, I'm pro-life. I want to make sure that every baby is born and is able to exist, but that's not my choice. If you, as a woman or women with you or that know you, want to have an abortion, that's up to you. And that's a decision between you and your spiritual being and your spiritual guidance and your doctor. And the father perhaps is included in that decision. But those are decisions that I can't make for you and no legislature can.
What do you think? What do you think about this? Would you say that the threat of nuclear war is up there as one of the most important issues?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, how do we combat that? We combat
Let
that
me
by
let
bringing
me
the troops home.
let me say something right there. If you
Okay,
talk about
sure.
if you talk about pro-choice or pro-life, to
Uh-huh.
me, that's irrelevant because if the bomb is dropped, if somebody presses that button, whether it's the president of the United States or Vladimir Putin, we're gone. We're all gone. So as far as I'm concerned, every other issue is secondary to me.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Why would he push the button? What would cause him to want to do that? I'm going to answer my own question.
Okay,
Because he feels threatened.
right,
Now, why would he feel threatened? Because we have missiles, the US, through NATO, have missiles pointed directly at him.
correct.
Why do we do that? Let's bring the troops home. Let's bring our men and women, fighting women. I'm a veteran. My father's 30 years Air Force. My brother was 20 years Air Force. I was 9 years in the reserves. So I'm very, very involved in the concept of having a strong military.
Mhm.
No problem with that. But we don't. Why are we in Germany? Why are we in Germany? Why are we in Japan? Now, a case might be made for South Korea, but I'm really not sure about that either. Are we being, what's the word I want to use? Not instigators, but are being there, is that causing people distress? My feeling is, forgive me for saying this, but 9/11 was caused by people who thought we're going to attack them because they're attacking us.
Mhm.
So we want peace in the world. Let's fight for peace. Let's bring the war makers home. Let's protect our borders. Let's make sure that we have a place where people want to come, and we'll talk about immigration in a minute. We want to be that beacon of light. Ronald Reagan, the movie just came out. Ronald Reagan talked about a beacon of light, a beacon of freedom, and we want to have a beacon of freedom. Now, I will admit that I have some issues with what Reagan did during his term, but the concepts he brought forth were absolutely right. Let's be a beacon of light to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Have I answered your question?
Yes.
Good.
So, you've been involved in politics for a long time, huh?
Since my 20s, yes. Actually, before I was 20, I was probably 18 or 19. I was
Mhm.
campaigning for a gentleman for governor in Kansas. And somebody asked me, how much is he paying for votes? And not wanting, I'm a very snarky person, but not wanting to be snarky and perhaps lose a vote, I almost said to him, how much is your vote worth?
Mm-hmm.
You're willing to sell your vote? Okay. So we've now established that you're a prostitute. We're just arguing over the price. And that's what got me thinking. I'm sorry, that's probably inappropriate, but that got me thinking about, why do we have only one vote? And so years later, I met this guy named Frank Atwood here in Denver. He was at a convention promoting approval voting. This is like 10, 12 years ago. And I said to him, Frank, we need electoral reform. We need electoral college reform, but we don't need, this is crazy. You're an idiot. This is never going to work. You're never going to get this adopted. And he very politely suggested I read a book called Gaming the Vote by William Poundstone, cousin to Paula Poundstone, comedian. So I'm been challenged. So I bought the Kindle version that night, started reading it. 3 days later, I'm a math guy, so it was a page turner for me. 3 days later, I call Frank up and says, I've drank the Kool-Aid, Frank. How can I help? And ever since then, we've gone to conferences, we've run for office, we've done a lot of things. So yeah, approval voting is the number one issue right now, to make sure we get the right leadership, the leadership that will truly represent who we are as individuals and not who the power brokers want to have us vote for.
Mm-hmm.
Take back our ballot box.
Okay. So I honestly don't think that you are going to achieve your goals this election cycle.
Correct. I agree.
So how long do you think you will agitate, you and your buddies will agitate before this comes to fruition?
Well, let's take a look at the history. So Fargo, North Dakota got approval voting about 10 years ago. St. Louis got it about 8 years ago, six to 8 years ago. We now have groups on the ground. These are not groups that we have sponsored, but these are groups that have come up through efforts like ours in Utah, in Texas, in Missouri, in Oregon. There's a group of folks that want to promote star voting, which has approval voting as a part of it. So there's many different people that are looking at alternative voting methods and want to push them. There's a method called ranked choice voting. I'm not a fan. It's more complicated. It's got a lot of promise, and I have people telling me it's overpromised. I'm not going to get into that. It's a wholly different method. I like things simple. Mark your ballot in your mind. Instead of ranking them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, rate them 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I could rate 2 candidates of 5. I could rate 2 candidates of 4. I can mark my ballot for all the candidates that rate high enough that I'd be okay with them if they got elected. So it's very simple and it's cheap. We don't have to do anything. Voting machine people says we can change that. We just take out the vote for only one restriction, and you can mark your ballot for everybody that you want to vote for. The message on the ballot says vote for one and only one. We just remove that. Vote for all you like. Cheap.
I envision
Uh-huh.
November 5th,
Uh-huh.
when the polls close,
Yes.
that it's not going to be decided that night. The following, I think it's going to be a protracted drama for a while.
That
So,
could be.
and so after election day, would you be willing to come back on issues that matter, to talk about what's going on and maybe how you envision you could solve it.
I'd be happy to. I'm
Okay,
not sure it would make any difference because the vote has already gone through. But yes, we need to have continuing conversations about issues. Let's talk about immigration, for example. My
okay.
grandfather emigrated here from Austria. He came over here to make a life, and he did. We were never wealthy in our family, but we were okay. We did well. We were middle class, maybe a little bit above middle class. I got no inheritance. For example, I don't have a generational wealth that some candidates have. But that's not the issue. The issue is he wanted a better life. My mother was a first generation American. I'm a second generation American.
Mhm.
This is what really helps our country become better, become, I don't want to use the word more powerful, but more economically solvent. We need to let people come in. And I envision a wide gate. Have a wall if you want, but have a wide gate so everybody can come through if they don't have anything obviously wrong with them. Remember, 9/11, all those people that came here to do 9/11 came here legally.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me sick. So we have these poor people trying to get in here. We're demonizing them, saying they came from prisons. What's the proof? Show me the proof. I don't believe that. I believe that these people want a better life. Now, as I get older, they can use, I joke about this, and it is a joke, but please use my social security number. When you work, pay into my social security so I can live a better life. Now that's not appropriate and it's not right. It is a joke. But these people need to come here. They need to be able to work so that they can make a living for themselves and their families and pay taxes. Social Security is spiraling down because we have fewer workers. We have fewer people per retiree working now than we did back when Social Security was created back in the 30s. Back then it was like 50 to 1. Now it's like 5 to 1.
Now, I saw something pretty interesting. I saw a cartoon on Facebook a few weeks ago where the Native Americans, it said, we should have put up the wall then to keep out the Europeans. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go back to where you came from. Well, you
right,
can't tell an American Indian that or an indigenous, whatever
correct,
name they want to be called by now. You can't.
right.
In fact, my running mate is an indigenous person.
Mm-hmm.
So her name is, I'm sorry, I'm blanking out for a second. Andrea Denault.
Okay.
And Andrea Denault grew up on a reservation. She talked to me about Mount Rushmore and how that is supporting. It's like us saying people in the South, well, people in the North saying Robert E. Lee was a bad person. She's saying George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, these people were bad people.
Mm-hmm.
So from her point of view, I get it.
Okay.
Don't agree, but I get it.
Now, where does she live?
She lives, of all places, Fargo, North Dakota.
Okay.
And she's been involved in the approval voting movement for years. She
Okay.
helped Fargo get on the ballot.
Okay.
Approval voting get on the ballot for Fargo.
So I have a doctor's appointment that I have to go to.
Okay.
So let's talk again after the election's over.
Wonderful.
Okay?
You have my contact info.
Yep.
Please let me know. Okay.
So you've been listening to Blake Huber. Huber.
Huber.
Huber. So sorry. I'm
It's like
Cynthia.
Uber with an H. The H is
I'm Cynthia Poola. This is Issues That Matter. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you, Blake, and we'll talk again.